I'm gonna show you 3 easy tests that will finally help you understand why your hips are the way they are, why they may feel tight, stiff, or just out of alignment. And these tests can be done anytime, anywhere, and all they really require is for you to lay on the floor. Real quick, guys, before we get into this, I just wanna quickly mention that if you're interested in this and you wanna learn more about this and dive deeper into my methodology, I have a flash sale going on that expires within 24 hours for my biomechanics course, which starts in August. This is a really good way for you to get deep into understanding how you can fix common asymmetrical patterns, how you can improve movement and posture, and do it in a way that really leads to long-term change. So if you want to learn more, check out the link down below in the description. This is the pelvis rotation test, the first assessment. Now, this is going to tell us how well Jacob can turn his pelvis towards one side versus the other. So he's going to pull his knees and feet up and together right there, maybe scoot his heels a little closer to his butt right there, and he should feel pretty comfortable in this position. Now he's gonna put his arms out by his sides, just like that, and that's gonna give him an idea for when to stop the test once we go through it. So keeping his knees and his feet together, he's just slowly gonna take them off to one side. And at some point, he's gonna feel like the opposite side shoulder is gonna lift off of the ground. Once he feels that temptation for it to lift, he's gonna stop the test, take a note of where he is. You might wanna film yourself or just visually look and see what's going on right here. And then he's gonna go to the other side. So if we see from a top-down angle, Jacob go and take his knees to the left, you can get a feel for his range of motion right there. He's keeping his feet and knees together. If they separate, that would be the end of the test. We do not want that. Keep them together. This right side, this right foot's gonna come off the ground. It's totally okay. But if Jacob went any further than that, his shoulder on that right side is gonna lift off of the ground too. We don't want that. Okay, so now let's compare that to his right side. And let's do that. All right, so Jacob, which side felt easier to you? I would agree. It looks like his right side went a little bit further than his left. And if he went any further than that, his left shoulder would pop off. So again, it's gonna feel usually better on the side you have more range of motion to, but if you wanna be sure, you can take a video from the top down just like this. So within this test, pelvis rotation is assessing for how much we can turn our hips to one side relative to the other. If my hips are turned towards, let's say, the right side, then it will be easier for me to take my knees together off to the right. And therefore, it will be harder for me to rotate my pelvis as much to the left because I won't have as much rotation at the lowest part of my spine and the ability for me to turn my pelvis to that side as well. This is the straight leg raise, the second test. Now for this, he's just gonna lay straight, keeping his body nice and relaxed, and he's gonna lock out one knee. And don't overly lock it out or overly stress yourself out about it. Just about 90% is all you really need here for effort to lock out that knee. And then he's gonna slowly raise one leg, keeping a straight line from his heel to his hip. And he's gonna stop once he feels a huge stretch in here, or if he went any higher, he'd start to roll his pelvis or lift that other leg off of the ground. At that point, he's going too far. He's not using genuine hip mobility. He's just trying to move through his low back or his pelvis in a compensatory way. So that's his left side. Now let's compare that relatively to his right side. So Jacob, I'm gonna have you raise that right leg. Yep. So it looks like his left one is better. Is that what it feels like to you?
Yes.
Okay, so he would have a better left straight leg raise relative to his right. Let's keep that in mind moving forward. Now the straight leg raise test is assessing for how flexible your hamstring is, being represented by this band right here. But we have to ask ourselves why you might have less of a straight leg raise on one side relative to the other. Now, if I have a pelvis that is more forward on one side, you see how that stretches out the hamstring? My left side moves forward, that's gonna stretch out the left hamstring more than the right. Now, that is telling me that if I then stretch that muscle out more with something like a straight leg raise test, then I'm not gonna have any more room to stretch that muscle. So you're going to usually see, in many cases, less straight leg raise range of motion on the side of the pelvis that is more forward. For example, if I had a pelvis that was turned towards the right side, that would mean that my pelvis is more forward on the left. So I'd have less of a straight leg raise range of motion on my left side in many cases. The last test is hip abduction, or a side leg lift. So for this to be optimal, it is good to use a pillow. You don't have to use one, but it is really helpful. So Jacob's gonna take that, double fold it if it's more of a thin pillow, and then put it underneath his side so that way his bottom hip can still stay flat on the floor. It's just underneath his rib cage like that. Now here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna start with the leg out in front a little bit, and we're gonna make sure our head and neck are relaxed. He's supporting his head like he's taking a nap. Now Jacob is going to roll his hip forward so that way it's square with the wall ahead of them, and his knee is bent around a 90-degree angle right here. This is gonna ensure that he has a neutral pelvis right here. So his pelvis isn't tilted into an anterior tilt or a posterior tilt where it's rounded under. It's nice and neutral. Now he's going to very slowly bring this leg back until he feels like his ribs are about to flare, or he feels like his back is going to arch, or anything other than movement at his hip is happening. So right about there, Jacob's good. Now he's gonna make sure again that his hip is rolled and square facing that wall, and he's going to then keep his leg straight and slowly lift that leg. And once he feels like if he goes any higher than that, he is going to side bend here to compensate. That's what the pillow is preventing. Or he feels like he's gonna roll his hip back. That's the end of the test. So many people have much less range of motion than they think that they're gonna have. So right about there, Jacob is done. Let's go compare that to the other side. Go ahead, Jacob. Ooh, that's more limited. So does that feel worse than your right side? Yeah. Definitely. Now, that's really good that he stopped at that point, because if he went any higher, he would just side bend there. So if you're not using a pillow, let's pull this out really quick. It'd be much easier to cheat and side bend, and we don't want that. So just, if you're not using a pillow, make sure that you're not crunching here and you're stopping where you would feel like you're gonna kick on those abs to get that leg any higher. Hip abduction is testing for the ability for us to be able to have space to turn out of a given side or move away from a given side. So let's stick with the example of the pelvis being turned towards that right side. If I have a pelvis and it's facing the right, that's going to slide my femur relatively more forward within the hip socket like that. So what hip abduction is assessing for is the space that the femur has to slide forward in the hip socket as that leg moves up. So if I can turn away from my left side more, then I will have more hip abduction and what we would also call external rotation space on that side. Now we just took 3 tests right there, and that means that that's an odd number of tests, which means everyone will have 2 out of 3, if not all 3 tests, indicating that they fit one of these more than the other, meaning that their pelvis is overall more biased towards the right or left side. Let's stick with the example of the pelvis turned towards the right side. What I would expect to see in this case, because I'm turned this way, my pelvis rotation would be better with my knees going to the right. I would have a better straight leg raise on my right, but I would have better hip abduction or that leg lift on the left. So if you have 2 out of 3 or all 3 tests indicating that your pelvis is turned towards one side or oriented towards a given side, then it is very likely that is the case. But keep in mind that is not a comprehensive assessment. It's only 3 tests. It's gonna give you a good idea, but it's not gonna give you the best idea. So if you wanna learn more about that, check out my biomechanics course. And also I have a deep dive lateral pelvic tilt video on YouTube that can give you more information. But now let's explain why your hips might feel kind of jammed up in the way that they do given these assessment results. If your pelvis is turned towards one side, you might feel jammed within that hip, or it might feel stuck to you with limited range of motion because there's no room for that hip to move into relative amounts of external rotation. Internal rotation is the femur turning in, external rotation is the femur turning out like that. Now, if you don't have space for you to do this, then it's hard for you to lift your leg. It's hard for you to turn away from that side. You might feel like you're compressed in that hip. It might feel like it's restricted in its ability to express range of motion in a way where your leg is moving away from you. Or it might feel like you just can't sort of like let go of tension in that hip. It might feel like you're stuck in that hip. And there's a lot of different ways that we can subjectively feel a restriction there, but for the most part, it's going to feel limited in aspects of movement where you are lifting that leg or turning away from that side. Now for the other side, let's say again the pelvis is turned towards the right side. For the left side, you may feel jammed up or locked up within this hip. It might feel like something is off because you struggle to effectively turn into that side. We struggle to properly shift and have the femur move back within the hip socket. And because that side is typically more forward, you might feel a tight hip flexor on that side, a tighter low back because that side is being pushed forward. And you can feel like it's like you have trouble just effectively staying in, shifted into that side. You don't turn as well into that side. And these are common subjective things, but again, it's not all encompassing. But hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea for why you may feel the way you feel within one hip relative to the other. Now you may be wondering, well, what can I do about this now that I know kind of what's going on? Well, I'm gonna share 2 exercises in the description that you can use for each given side. So let's say you're turned to one side, you would help facilitate muscles such as the glutes that help push you out of that side and turn you to the other side. So you would do the glute exercise or facilitate the recruitment of the glute on the side that you're turned towards. And then the other exercise where you're gonna facilitate muscles that help pull you into a given side, you wanna activate those muscles on the side you're turned away from. So that would not be the side that you were turned towards. And I will link that again down below in the description.